The alarm cut through the quiet hum of the Celestial Mercy's bridge. Captain Helen Park sat up straight in her chair and looked at the communications officer. "Distress signal from 7, the officer said. "Mining colony, cave-in, multiple casualties reported." Helen didn't hesitate. "Set course, maximum speed, alert medical and rescue teams." The Celestial Mercy was not a warship. It was a medical frigate that served the entire Confederation. Humans worked alongside dozens of alien species, all dedicated to saving lives wherever help was needed. The ship carried the best doctors, the best equipment, and the best hope for people in crisis. Down in the nutrition lab, Danny Martinez was checking supply levels when his communicator buzzed. He was the ship's food systems specialist. His job was to make sure every species on board got the right nutrition. It was harder than it sounded. What kept a healthy could poison what a human considered a balanced meal might starve "Danny, we're responding to an emergency," his supervisor's voice came through. "Prep emergency rations for civilians, unknown number, could be long-term care." "On it," Danny said. He pulled up the nutritional database and started preparing supply packs. 6 hours later, the Celestial Mercy reached 7. The rescue teams went down in shuttles while medical bays prepared for incoming wounded. Danny watched from the observation deck as the shuttles returned, one after another, carrying survivors on stretchers. The mining colony had been home to 300 workers mostly. They were a feline species, covered in thick fur that ranged from golden to dark brown. They walked upright like humans but had tails and ears that moved to show their emotions. They were strong, smart, and known across the Confederation as excellent engineers. The cave-in had killed 42 workers. Another 60 were injured. The rest were traumatized but physically unhurt. Danny was in the main galley preparing meal trays when Doctor came to find him. She was herself, with warm amber fur and eyes that usually sparkled with kindness. Today, those eyes were filled with worry. "Danny, I need your help," she said. He wiped his hands on his apron. "What's wrong?" 3 cubs orphaned in the collapse. Their parents both died." His tail drooped low, a sign of deep distress. "They won't eat. It's been 3 days." Danny's chest tightened. 3 days, are they sick? "No, physically they're fine, but trauma can do this, especially to children. They're shutting down." Looked exhausted. "I've tried everything, every food their parents listed as favorites. Traditional comfort foods from their home region. Nothing works. They just sit together and stare." "Show me," Danny said. They walked to the pediatric medical bay. It was a bright, warm room designed to feel less frightening for young patients. Soft lighting, gentle colors, toys scattered in corners. But the 3 cubs huddled in the center of the room looked like they didn't see any of it. The oldest was a female named Myra. She couldn't have been more than 6 in human years. Her fur was dark brown, and she had positioned herself between her younger siblings and the rest of the room. Her ears were flat against her head, her tail wrapped tight around her body. The middle cub was a male with lighter brown fur and wide, frightened eyes. He pressed close to his sister, trembling slightly. The youngest was a small female with golden fur. She clung to Myra's side, so small she almost disappeared against her sister's body. Danny's heart broke looking at them. They looked so lost, so scared. "What have you offered them?" he asked quietly. Pulled up a data pad. Nutrition paste, grade 3 for cubs, fresh proteins from there, dried meats, sweet grains. Their mother's food logs showed they liked everything. But now nothing, they won't even look at it. Danny studied the cubs. They didn't look at the food bowls placed near them. They barely moved at all except for slight trembling. "Do you mind if I try something?" Danny asked. "Try anything," said. "Please, if they don't eat soon we'll have to use feeding tubes, and that will make the trauma worse." Danny nodded. "Give me a few hours, I need to do some research." Back in his quarters, Danny pulled up everything he could find about child-rearing practices. He read about their family structures, their feeding rituals, their traditions. The more he read, the more he understood. Cubs didn't just eat food, they ate with family. Meals were communal, warm, shared experiences. Parents would often taste food first, showing it was safe. Siblings would eat from the same bowl, touching shoulders, their tails intertwined. Food wasn't just nutrition, it was connection, it was safety, it was love. These cubs had lost all of that in one terrible moment. Danny sat back in his chair and thought about his own childhood. He'd been 7 when his parents died in a shuttle accident. His grandmother had raised him after that. He remembered those first weeks. He hadn't wanted to eat either. Nothing had seemed worth the effort. But then his grandmother had started cooking, not just preparing food, but really cooking. She would let him sit in the kitchen and watch. She would talk to him while she chopped vegetables and stirred pots. She would tell him stories about his parents, about her own childhood, about anything and everything. And she made soup, chicken soup with vegetables and noodles. It was simple, nothing fancy. But it was warm and smelled like safety. She would taste it first, then blow on a spoonful to cool it for him. And slowly, day by day, he had started eating again. It wasn't the food that had healed him. It was the ritual, the care, the presence of someone who loved him, showing that love through the simple act of cooking. Danny stood up. He knew what he needed to do. He went to the human provisions storage and gathered ingredients. Chicken stock base, carrots, celery, onions, rice noodles, salt and pepper, simple things, earth things. Then he went to find Lisa in engineering. She was a human crew member who could fix anything. "Lisa, I need a favor," he said. "I need a portable cooking station set up in the pediatric medical bay. Something safe, something the kids can see and smell." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Cooking in medical, going to love that." "It's desperate," Danny said. "Trust me." It took Lisa an hour to rig up a safe cooking unit with proper ventilation. Danny set it up in the corner of the pediatric bay where the cubs could see it, but didn't feel crowded by it. The cubs didn't react when he entered. They didn't even look up. Watched from the doorway, her tail twitching with uncertainty. "Danny, what are you doing?" "Something my grandmother taught me," he said. "Just let me try." He started with the stock, heating it slowly. The warm, savory smell began to fill the room. He chopped vegetables with careful, rhythmic movements. He hummed softly while he worked, an old earth lullaby his grandmother used to sing. The cubs still didn't move, but Myra's ear twitched just slightly, just once. Danny kept cooking. He added the vegetables to the pot and stirred gently. He talked while he worked, his voice low and calm. "My grandmother used to make this when I was sad," he said. "She said good soup takes time. You can't rush it. You have to let the flavors talk to each other. Let them become something new together." His head lifted a fraction of an inch. His nostrils flared, taking in the scent. Danny added the noodles. He let the soup simmer, filling the medical bay with warmth and the smell of home. Not a home, not exactly, but the scent of care and safety translated across species. He poured himself a bowl first, tasted it, made a satisfied sound. Then he poured a small bowl and set it on the floor, well within reach of the cubs but not threatening their space. "It's good," he said to no one in particular. "It's safe." Then he went back to his cooking station and waited. Hours passed in the pediatric medical bay. Danny stayed on the floor, cooking and eating and talking softly. The cubs remained huddled together, but something had changed. They were alert now. Their ears moved, following sounds. Their eyes tracked Danny's movements. Came and went, checking monitors and bringing Danny fresh ingredients when he needed them. She didn't question his methods anymore. She could see the difference in the cubs, even if they hadn't eaten yet. "Tell me about family meals," Danny said to her during one of her visits. "How do parents feed their cubs?" Sat down near him, careful to keep her distance from the children so they wouldn't feel crowded. "It's a ritual," she said. "The family gathers in a circle. Parents serve food in a central bowl. Cubs eat together, touching shoulders or tails. It's about closeness, about trust. Parents taste the food first to show it's safe. And if a cub is frightened or sick, the parent will sit with them, cook near them, let them smell the food, see it being prepared, make them part of the process." His tail curled sadly. "These cubs have no parents now, no one to show them safety." Danny looked at the three small figures across the room. Maybe they need someone to show them that safety can come from unexpected places. He went back to his cooking. He made another batch of soup, this time letting the process take even longer. He explained each step out loud, not to but to the room itself, to whoever might be listening. "Carrots go in first because they take longest to soften. My grandmother said you should cut them the same size so they cook evenly. She said cooking was about being fair, even to vegetables." Myra's tail twitched. It was the first voluntary movement Danny had seen from her. "Then celery because it's delicate. It doesn't need as much time. And onions at the end because they can get mushy if you cook them too long." Made a small sound, barely a whisper, but it was the first sound any of the cubs had made in days. Danny's heart raced, but he kept his voice calm and steady. The smell is the best part. My grandmother said a good soup should smell like a hug. I never understood that until I got older, but now I think she was right. He poured fresh bowls, one for himself and one that he placed near the cubs. He went back to his spot against the wall and ate slowly, making gentle, satisfied sounds. The smallest cub lifted her head. She looked at the bowl, then at Danny, then back at the bowl. Danny pretended not to notice. He just kept eating, kept humming that old lullaby. Myra made a decision. She stood up slowly, her legs shaking slightly from sitting still for so long. She walked toward the bowl. Her siblings stayed behind, watching with wide eyes. She sniffed the soup, her whiskers twitched. She looked at Danny and he could see the question in her eyes. Can I trust this? Can I trust you? Danny took another spoonful of his own soup and swallowed. It's good, he said softly. It's safe, I promise. Myra dipped one claw into the broth. She brought it to her mouth and licked it carefully. Her eyes widened just a bit. It didn't taste like anything she'd ever eaten before. It wasn't food. But it was warm, it was savory, and something about it felt right. She looked back at her siblings, then at Danny again. Danny slowly pushed his own bowl toward her, sliding it across the floor until it stopped near her feet. You can have mine too, he said. There's plenty. Myra sniffed his bowl. It smelled the same as the other one. She took a small lap of the broth, then another. Her tail, which had been tucked tight for days, loosened just a fraction. She turned and walked back to her siblings. She nuzzled against, and Danny could see her whiskers carry the scent of the soup to them. She was doing what a parent would do, testing it first, showing them it was safe. Danny's throat tightened with emotion, but he kept his expression calm. He stood up quietly and prepared 3 small bowls. He arranged them in a triangle on the floor, closed together the way he'd read cubs preferred to eat. The 3 cubs looked at the bowls, then at each other. Then, moving as one unit, they approached together. They didn't rush, they moved carefully, still uncertain, but they moved. All 3 cubs lowered their heads to the bowls and began to drink. Small laps at first, hesitant, testing. Then, as the warm broth filled their stomachs and the fear began to ease, they drank more eagerly. His breath caught, Danny glanced at her and saw tears in her large eyes. But something even more remarkable was happening. His tail began to move, not the nervous twitch of fear, but a gentle swaying motion. Back and forth, back and forth. It was the movement of contentment, of pleasure, of a cub who felt safe enough to express joy. Then his tail joined in, swaying in rhythm with his sister's. And finally, Myra's tail loosened and began to wag gently as she drank. They're wagging, whispered. By the stars, they're wagging their tails. Danny had never seen a cub wag its tail before, but he recognized the emotion behind it. It was the same as a human child's smile after being sad for too long. It was relief. It was the first small step back toward being okay. The medical bay door opened and Dr. Grant stepped in. He was the ship's, a human who specialized in cross-species medicine. He stopped short when he saw the scene. Are they eating? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Drinking soup, said, and Wagging, look at them, they're wagging. Pulled out his medical scanner and ran a quick check from a distance, careful not to disturb the cubs. His eyebrows rose as he read the results. Stress hormones dropping, heart rates normalizing, this is remarkable. He looked at Danny. What's in that soup? Chicken stock, vegetables, noodles. Basic protein supplement to meet nutritional needs, nothing special. But it is special, said, still watching his scanner. Look at their brain activity. The amygdala, the fear center, is calming down. But more than that, the parts of the brain associated with bonding and comfort are lighting up. It's not the food, Danny said. It's the ritual, the process. They needed to see someone care about them, someone take time for them. The soup is just the vehicle. Nodded slowly. We've been thinking about nutrition as pure science, chemical compounds and caloric requirements. But for many species, especially young ones, food is emotional, it's social, it's love made physical. The cubs finished their first bowls. They looked up at Danny with broth on their whiskers. For the first time, there was a spark of life in their eyes. Myra took a step toward him, then another. She approached slowly, cautiously, but she approached. When she reached him, she rubbed her head against his leg. It was a gesture of trust and gratitude. And followed their sister. Soon all 3 cubs were near Danny, their tails still gently swaying. made a small sound almost like a purr. Danny sat down on the floor again and the cubs curled up near him, not quite touching but close. Their tails formed a loose tangle and their breathing began to match rhythms. Wiped her eyes. How did you know this would work? I didn't, Danny admitted. I just remembered being a scared kid who didn't want to eat, and I remembered the person who helped me through it. He looked at the cubs, now resting peacefully for the first time in days. My grandmother never talked about nutrition or calories. She just cooked with care, and somehow that was enough. Word spread through the Celestial Mercy quickly. Crew members found excuses to walk past the pediatric medical bay. They wanted to see the cubs who were eating Earth soup. They wanted to see the human who had succeeded where advanced medicine had struggled. Lieutenant Carey Bishop, the ship's cultural liaison officer, came to talk to Danny. Can I ask you some questions? I want to document this for the cultural database. It's just soup, Danny said, embarrassed by the attention. It's not just soup, Carey said firmly. It's a breakthrough in trauma care. Other ships need to know about this. By the evening cycle, the cubs had eaten 3 more bowls. Their tails wagged each time Danny prepared a fresh batch. They started making small sounds, soft chirps and purrs that said were signs of healing. Captain Helen Park visited the medical bay before her shift ended. She stood in the doorway, watching the cubs sleep in a peaceful pile near Danny's cooking station. Good work, Danny, she said quietly. I just made soup, Captain. You did more than that. You reminded us that technology and medicine can only do so much. Sometimes what people need most is simple kindness. She smiled. Keep it up. Something tells me those cubs aren't the only ones who need what you're offering. As if to prove her point, an engineering crew member named approached nervously after the captain left. Was a species with smooth blue skin and large black eyes. Specialist Martinez said hesitantly, My offspring is in medical surgery recovery, but won't eat. Would the soup work for? Danny looked at the 3 sleeping cubs, their tails still gently touching even in sleep. He thought about his grandmother. Danny stood in the medical bay looking at Young, the child who refused to eat. Was small for his species, maybe 8 years old in human equivalent. His blue skin had faded to a pale gray, a sign of illness or distress in. His large black eyes stared at nothing. His parent hovered nearby with obvious worry. Didn't have gendered parenting roles, and distress was clear in the way their skin rippled with darker patterns. The surgery was successful, Dr. Grant explained quietly to Danny. Removed a growth from his digestive system, but now he won't eat anything. We've tried nutrient solutions, soft foods, everything on the approved list. Danny pulled up the nutritional database on his data pad. Their biology was very different from. They needed different proteins, different minerals. But as he read, he saw something familiar. It says here that Young traditionally eat foods prepared by family members. That meal preparation is a bonding activity. Yes, said. Before the surgery, I cooked for every day, simple broths with mineral supplements. It was our special time together. Danny looked at the Young. The pattern was the same as the cubs. Trauma, separation from normal routine, loss of the rituals that meant safety and love. Can you help me adapt the soup? Danny asked. Show me what ingredients likes, what's safe for, we'll make it together. Skin brightened slightly, the first sign of hope. You would do that? Of course. They worked together in the small medical bay kitchenette. Showed Danny the mineral broths preferred, the plant matter that provided their nutrition, the way temperature and texture mattered to their species. Danny contributed the method, the ritual, the care in preparation. As they cooked, something unexpected happened. Other crew members began gathering in the observation area outside the medical bay. They pressed against the glass, watching. Navigator Sam Reed was there, a young human who'd transferred to the Celestial Mercy 6 months ago. Next to him stood Security Chief Rachel, her arms crossed but her expression soft. Even some of the medical staff had come to watch. What are they all looking at? Danny asked. You, Dr. Grant said simply. Word's gotten around about the cubs. People are curious. The soup simmered and the smell filled the medical bay. It didn't smell like Danny's chicken soup. It had a mineral tang, a sharpness from the plants. But it smelled warm. It smelled like someone cared enough to cook. Danny and prepared a bowl together, carried it to bedside, and Danny followed with his own bowl. Said softly, using their species' gentle clicking language. I made soup. The human specialist helped me. Would you like to try? Didn't respond at first, but slowly his large eyes moved to look at the bowl, then at his parent, then at Danny. Danny sat down on the floor near the bed and started eating his own portion. He made the same gentle, satisfied sounds he'd made for the cubs. He talked while he ate, keeping his voice low and calm. Food tastes better when someone you love makes it, he said. That's what my grandmother always told me. I didn't understand when I was little, but now I think the love is part of the recipe. Watched him. The young skin began to shift color slightly, darkening from that pale gray toward a healthier blue. Tasted the soup first, showing it was safe in the traditional way. Then they offered a small sip too. The child drank just a little, but it was something. By the time Danny left the medical bay that evening, had consumed half a bowl. It wasn't a miracle like the cub's tail wagging, but it was progress. Skin had brightened to nearly normal color with relief. In the observation area, Sam Reed approached Danny as he cleaned up. That was something special, Sam said. My mom used to make cornbread when I was sick, nothing fancy, just cornbread and butter, but it always made me feel better. What made it special? Danny asked. She'd sit with me while it baked, tell me stories. The waiting was part of it, you know? The anticipation, the smell filling the house. By the time I ate it, I already felt halfway better. Rachel joined them. My grandmother made Korean stew. She'd let me help chop vegetables even when I was tiny. She said cooking together was how we stayed connected across the ocean from the rest of our family. More crew members shared their stories. A medical technician talked about ceremonial grain dishes. An engineer from Earth South America described his father's. Everyone, it seemed, had a food memory that was about more than nutrition. Dr. Grant listened to all of it with his clinical mind working. This is fascinating. Across species, across cultures, the pattern is the same. Food preparation as bonding, shared meals as emotional anchors. We've been so focused on the chemistry that we forgot the psychology. It's not just psychology, Danny said. It's love. That sounds soft and unscientific, but I don't know what else to call it. Love is just a word for a complex set of bonding behaviors and neurochemical responses, said, then he smiled. But yes, love works too. Captain Helen Park appeared at the edge of the group. Danny, can I speak with you in my ready room? Danny followed her, wondering if he'd done something wrong. But when they reached her office, she gestured for him to sit, and her expression was thoughtful, not angry. You've started something here, she said. I've been getting reports from all over the ship, crew members talking about comfort foods, parents thinking differently about how they feed their children. Even our mess hall staff is asking questions. I just made soup, Captain. You showed people something they'd forgotten, that feeding someone is an act of care, that the how matters as much as the what. She leaned forward. I want you to document your process, write it up as a protocol. Confederation Medical Command needs to see this. Danny felt overwhelmed. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I just cook. Exactly, you cook, you care, and somehow that's been more effective than all our advanced medicine for these traumatized children, she smiled. I'm not asking you to write a scientific paper, just explain what you do and why you think it works. The medical staff can handle the technical details. That night, Danny sat in his quarters trying to write the protocol. How did you explain care in clinical terms? How did you turn a grandmother's kitchen wisdom into something official? He started with what he knew, the importance of visible preparation, the power of familiar smells, the security of shared meals, the trust built by someone tasting food first. His door chimed. When he opened it, stood there holding something wrapped in cloth. The cubs asked me to bring you this, she said. Danny unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a small carved figure, clearly work. It showed a human and 3 cubs sitting together, their tails intertwined. Myra made it in craft therapy today, explained. It's the first thing she's created since the accident. She wanted you to have it. Danny's eyes burned with emotion. Tell her thank you, tell her I'll treasure it. They're asking for you, said. They won't sleep without their evening soup. I could make it from your recipe, but they want you there. Danny went back to the medical bay. The cubs brightened when they saw him, their tails wagging immediately. He set up his portable cooking station and began the familiar ritual. As he cooked, he talked to them. He told them about Earth, about his grandmother, about the importance of family however you found it. You lost your parents, he said softly. I lost mine too when I was young. It hurts. It's going to hurt for a long time, but you're not alone. You have each other, and you have people who care about you. Myra chirped softly. A sound said meant understanding. The soup doesn't fix the hurt, Danny continued. Nothing can do that, but it can remind you that good things still exist, that people still care, that there's still warmth in the world. The cubs ate their soup with enthusiasm now, their tails wagging throughout the meal. When they finished, they curled up near Danny as had become their habit. The smallest actually climbed into his lap. Dr. Grant stopped by to check on them. Their vitals are excellent, stress hormones normal, sleep patterns improving. In a few more days, they'll be ready to transfer to the embassy. They'll be scared again, Danny said, stroking soft fur gently. Probably, but they'll remember this. They'll remember that kindness exists, that strangers became friends, that they survived the worst day of their lives and found reasons to wag their tails again. Over the next few days, more children came to the medical bay. Not all were traumatized like the cubs. Some were just sick and refusing to eat. Some were anxious about medical procedures. Some were simply homesick. Danny adapted his soup for each species. He cooked with parents when possible, learning their family recipes and traditions. He listened to stories about home and family and the foods that meant love in 100 different cultures. The medical bay began to smell like a kitchen more than a hospital, and somehow that made it a better place for healing. Young recovered fully and left the medical bay with, before they went, gave Danny a small crystal traditional thanks for a great service. The three cubs grew stronger each day. They played now gentle games that said were appropriate for their age. They talked about their parents without breaking down. They made plans for their future with their extended family. But every evening they had soup with Danny, and every evening their tails wagged with pure, simple joy. Captain Park submitted Danny's protocol to Confederation Medical Command. Within a week, he received a response. They wanted him to present at their next symposium. They wanted to distribute his methods to hospital ships across the Confederation. The Celestial Mercy received new orders 3 weeks after the 7 rescue. They were to proceed to the home system and transfer the 3 cubs to their surviving family members. Danny felt his chest tighten when Captain Park made the announcement. He'd known this day would come. The cubs couldn't stay on a medical ship forever. They had family waiting for them, an aunt named who had been traveling across the sector when the accident happened. She'd finally arrived at Prime and was eager to take custody of her nieces and nephew. But knowing something would happen and feeling ready for it were different things. They'll be scared, Danny said to as they prepared for the transfer. They will, agreed, but they're so much stronger than they were. You gave them that strength. Danny wasn't sure he agreed, but he didn't argue. He went to the medical bay where the cubs were packing their few belongings. They'd accumulated toys and clothes during their stay, gifts from crew members who'd grown fond of them. Myra saw him first. Her tail immediately began wagging, and she rushed over to rub against his legs, and followed, both chirping their greeting sounds. Hey, little ones, Danny said, kneeling down to their level. Big day today. Going home, said in her small voice. She'd started speaking more in the past week, another sign of healing. Aunt waiting. That's right, your aunt loves you very much. She's been so worried about you. But we come back, asked, visit Danny. Danny's throat tightened. Maybe someday, the Celestial Mercy travels all over, we might come to Prime again. Will Aunt make soup? Myra asked. It was the question Danny had been expecting. He'd prepared for this. I made something for you to take with you. He pulled out a data pad and a carefully wrapped package. Inside the package was a collection of dried ingredients, pre-measured and labeled. Alongside it was a printed guide with pictures showing each step of making the soup. This is for your aunt, Danny explained. It shows her how to make the soup exactly the way I make it, and I recorded a video too, so you can watch me making it any time you want. He activated the video on the data pad. It showed him in the medical bay kitchen, going through the familiar motions of preparing soup. He talked through each step, explaining and telling stories just like he did when the cubs were present. Myra watched the video with wide eyes. You're there in the pad. I'm here too, Danny said, tapping his chest. And you'll carry me here. He gently tapped Myra's chest over her heart. Memories don't leave you. The people who care about you stay with you even when you're apart. The cubs understood. They might be young, but they'd learned about loss and memory in the hardest way possible. Dr. Grant came in to do final medical checks. All three are in excellent health, physically and psychologically. The trauma counselor says they're processing their grief in healthy ways. It's remarkable progress. They're remarkable cubs, Danny said. The ship reached Prime by midday. It was a beautiful world, covered in golden grasslands and deep forests. They had built their cities to blend with nature rather than dominate it. From orbit, it looked peaceful and welcoming. A shuttle came up from the surface to collect the cubs. With it came their aunt. She was older than the cub's mother had been, with darker fur shot through with silver, but her eyes held the same warmth, the same love. She entered the medical bay and stopped when she saw the three cubs. Her tail dropped low, and a sound came from her throat, something between a purr and a sob. "Little ones," she said in the language. "Oh, my little ones." The cubs ran to her. They crashed into her in a tangle of fur and tails, all of them making sounds of grief and relief and love. Wrapped her arms around all three, holding them tight, her tail curving around to include them all. Danny stood back, giving them space for their reunion. Stood beside him, tears running down her furry cheeks. After several minutes, looked up. She found Danny with her eyes and stood, bringing the cubs with her. "You are the human," she said in perfect standard, "the one who saved them." "I just made soup," Danny said, uncomfortable with the praise. "You did more than that," approached him, and the cubs came with her, still pressed against her sides. "I read the medical reports. My sister's cubs were dying from grief. Your medicine saved them when nothing else could." "It wasn't medicine, it was just care." "Care is the best medicine," performed a deep bow, a gesture of profound respect in culture. "My family owes you a debt we cannot repay." Danny shook his head. "There's no debt, I'm just glad they're okay." He knelt down one more time to say goodbye to the cubs. He gave Myra the carved figure she'd made for him. "I want you to keep this, to remember that you're strong, that you survived, that you can survive anything." He gave a small collection of earth spices, for when you want to try cooking yourself someday. For he had a soft blanket that smelled like the medical bay, like the place where she'd felt safe. For when you're scared at night. The cubs took their gifts solemnly. Then, as one, they moved forward and wrapped themselves around Danny in a group hug. Their tails intertwined with each other and brushed against Danny's legs. "Thank you," Myra whispered, "for everything." Danny held them for a long moment. Then he gently released them and stood. "You take care of each other, and let your aunt take care of you too." Took the package of soup ingredients and the data pad. She listened carefully as Danny explained how to make the soup, when to make it, why it mattered. "They'll ask for this," she said, "every night probably." "That's okay, it's part of their healing. Eventually they might not need it every night, but for now it's their anchor." "Will you show me, once before we leave?" So Danny set up his portable cooking station one last time in the medical bay. He cooked while watched, asking questions, taking notes. The cubs sat nearby, tails gently wagging as the familiar smells filled the air. When the soup was ready, they all ate together. Danny, the cubs, Dr. Grant, and even Captain Park, who'd come down to say goodbye. It was a proper family meal, everyone gathered together, sharing food and stories and warmth. As they ate, Sam Reed appeared at the door. Behind him were 24 crew members, humans and aliens alike. They'd come to say goodbye to the cubs. The cubs were overwhelmed by the attention at first, but then Myra stood up, her tail high and confident. She walked to each crew member and rubbed against them in thanks, and followed her example. By the time they finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The time came to leave. The cubs boarded the shuttle carrying their belongings and their precious gifts. They pressed against the shuttle's windows, waving as the ship pulled away from the Celestial Mercy. Danny waved back until the shuttle disappeared from view. "You did good," Captain Park said quietly beside him. "They did the hard part. They chose to heal. You gave them the choice. Before you, they were too lost to even try." She put a hand on his shoulder. "The Confederation Medical Command is very interested in your presentation. They've scheduled you for their main symposium in 3 months. Danny groaned, "I hate public speaking." "You'll do fine. Just cook soup on stage and tell your stories. That's all they want to see." Over the next few weeks, Danny's methods spread across the Confederation Medical Network. Other ships reported success with his protocols. Traumatized children across dozens of species were responding to comfort cooking, to visible food preparation, to the ritual of shared meals. Danny received messages from grateful parents. He got requests for consultations from hospitals. He got invitations to teach his methods at medical schools. It was overwhelming. He was just a food systems specialist. He wasn't qualified for all this attention. But then he'd think about Myra's tail wagging, about small voice saying his name, about's first smile after days of silence, and he'd remember why it mattered. One evening, he received a video message. It was from Prime. The image showed a warm kitchen with golden evening light streaming through windows, stood at a stove, stirring a pot. Around her, the three cubs sat at a table, watching. Danny said to the camera, "The cubs wanted you to see this. We make your soup every night. The whole family has learned, and we're teaching other families too." The camera panned to show an extended family. Uncles, aunts, cousins, grandparents, they all waved. Several had bowls of soup in front of them. "You saved more than 3 cubs," continued. "You taught us something we'd forgotten, that healing comes from connection, from care, from taking time to nourish not just the body but the spirit." The cubs crowded into the frame. Their fur was shiny and healthy. Their eyes were bright. Their tails wagged enthusiastically. "We love you, Danny," Myra said clearly. "Thank you for the soup," added. Just waved, her small face full of joy. The video ended with all of them sitting down to eat together, a proper family meal. But now the soup was part of their tradition. The human who'd saved their cubs had become part of their story. Danny watched the video 3 times. Then he saved it to his personal files and went to make himself dinner. In the galley, he prepared soup, not because he was sad or scared, but because it reminded him why his job mattered, why care mattered, why taking time to nourish people, really nourish them, was worth doing. As he cooked, crew members came and went. They'd started gathering in the galley during meal prep times, not to eat yet, but to watch, to talk, to share stories about food and family and home. The Celestial Mercy's galley had become more than a place to refuel. It had become a place of connection, of healing, of community. 3 months passed faster than Danny expected. The Celestial Mercy continued its mission, responding to emergencies across the Confederation. Danny continued his regular duties, but now he spent extra time working with traumatized patients, teaching parents his methods, refining his protocols. The symposium approached like a storm on the horizon. Danny grew more nervous each day. "You'll be fine," Dr. Grant said for the 100th time. "Just be yourself, tell the truth, share what you've learned." "I'm not a teacher, I'm not a public speaker. You're a healer, that's all they need to see." The symposium was held on Station, a massive medical facility that served as the Confederation's primary research and training center. Thousands of doctors, nurses, and medical specialists from across known space gathered there every year to share knowledge and advances. Danny had never felt more out of place. The station was huge, gleaming with technology. Holographic displays showed complex medical procedures. AI systems monitored patient care across dozens of species. Everything was advanced, precise, scientific. And Danny was going to talk about soup. Captain Park accompanied him, along with Dr. Grant, and "moral support," Park said with a smile. "And because I wouldn't miss this for anything." The night before his presentation, Danny couldn't sleep. He kept reviewing his notes, changing words, worrying that everything he wanted to say would sound foolish to real medical professionals. His communicator chimed. It was a message from on Prime. The video showed the 3 cubs in pajamas gathered around a data pad. They'd recorded a message for him. "Good luck tomorrow, Danny," Myra said. Her confidence had grown so much. She looked like a different cub from the traumatized child he'd first met. "Don't be nervous," added. "Just make soup like you always do." Held up a drawing she'd made. It showed Danny cooking while children from many different species watched. "We believe in you," she said in her small voice. Danny felt tears in his eyes. He watched the message 3 more times, then fell asleep with the data pad still playing. The next morning, the presentation hall was packed. Danny stood backstage, looking through a gap in the curtains at the massive crowd. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species filled the seats. Medical professionals who'd spent decades studying their crafts. and they were here to listen to a food systems specialist talk about cooking. His hands shook. 5 minutes, a stage manager said. Danny closed his eyes and thought about his grandmother, about Myra, and about Young and all the other children he'd helped. He thought about why this mattered. When he walked onto the stage, the lights were bright and the crowd was silent. He saw Dr. Grant in the front row, giving him an encouraging nod. Captain Park sat beside him, her expression confident. Danny set up his portable cooking station on the demonstration table. He'd brought all his ingredients, all his tools. If he was going to do this, he was going to do it right. "Good morning," he said into the microphone. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, too loud and too nervous. "My name is Danny Martinez. I'm a food systems specialist on the Celestial Mercy. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm just a cook." He paused, took a breath, and started preparing his soup. 3 months ago, we responded to a mining accident on 7. We rescued 3 cubs whose parents had died in the collapse. The cubs were physically fine, but they wouldn't eat. They were shutting down from trauma. As he talked, he chopped vegetables. The familiar rhythm calmed his nerves. "I tried something simple. I made soup the way my grandmother taught me, not because I thought it would work, but because I remembered being a scared child once, and I remembered what had helped me." He told them the whole story, the cooking station in the medical bay, the visible preparation, the waiting, the moment when Myra first tasted the broth, the tail wagging that meant hope returning. As he talked, the soup simmered. The smell filled the presentation hall, warm and comforting. Danny saw beings in the audience lean forward, their expressions changing from skeptical to curious. "The soup itself wasn't magic," Danny said. "It was adequate, but so was everything else they'd been offered. The difference was the process, the ritual, the visible act of someone taking time to care for them." He poured a bowl and tasted it himself, just like he did for the cubs. Food is more than fuel for our bodies. It's connection, it's comfort, it's love made physical. When we cook for someone, especially for a child, we're saying, "You matter, you're worth my time, you're safe with me." He showed videos of the cubs' recovery, their first meals, their tails wagging, their gradual return to playfulness and hope. The audience watched in silence, and Danny saw several beings wiping their eyes. "I've since worked with children from 6 different species. The details change, the ingredients change, but the principle stays the same. Visible preparation, familiar smells, shared meals, the presence of someone who cares enough to take time." He pulled up his documented protocols, showing the adaptations for different species and situations. "It doesn't replace medical treatment, it supplements it. It addresses the emotional trauma that can interfere with physical healing." Dr. Grant had helped him prepare graphs showing stress hormone levels, healing rates, psychological recovery metrics. The data supported what Danny's heart already knew. Care worked. Connection healed. "We've been treating nutrition as pure science," Danny concluded. "Calculating calories and chemical compounds, and that's important. But we've forgotten that for many beings, especially children, food is emotional, it's social, it's how we show love." He held up the small, carved figure Myra had made. "This was given to me by one of the cubs. It shows her, her siblings, and me sharing a meal. That moment of connection, that feeling of safety and care, that's what healed her. The soup was just the vehicle." The presentation ended. For a moment, the hall was silent. Danny's heart sank. He'd failed. They thought he was foolish. Then someone started clapping, then another. Then the entire hall erupted in applause. Beings stood up. They cheered. Danny stood on stage, overwhelmed, as hundreds of medical professionals from across the Confederation showed their appreciation. The question period lasted 2 hours. Doctors wanted to know specifics about adapting the method for their patients. Psychologists asked about the neurological mechanisms. Nutritionists wanted his recipes and protocols. Danny answered as best he could, always coming back to the same principle. Care matters, time matters. The ritual of preparation matters as much as the food itself. After the presentation, he was surrounded by people wanting to talk. A doctor told him about children in refugee camps who might benefit from his methods. A human pediatrician from Earth wanted to bring the protocols to children's hospitals. A researcher asked to study the cross-species applications. It was overwhelming and exhausting and wonderful. That evening, Captain Park took Danny and the others to dinner at the station's best restaurant. "You did it," she said, raising her glass in a toast. You changed medical practice across the Confederation. I just showed people something they already knew, Danny said. Everyone has memories of someone cooking for them with love. I just reminded them that those memories matter. A message came through on his communicator. It was from Confederation Medical Command. They wanted to create an official position for him, a traveling consultant who would train medical staff across the Confederation in his methods. Danny stared at the message. They want me to leave the Celestial Mercy. Only if you want to, Captain Park said. You're valuable wherever you are, but this would let you help more children. Danny thought about it for several days. He loved his ship. He loved his crew. But he thought about all the traumatized children across the Confederation who might benefit from a warm bowl of soup made with care. In the end, he accepted a compromise. He'd remain based on the Celestial Mercy but travel to other ships and facilities for training missions. He'd spread the knowledge while keeping his home. 6 months after the Seven rescue, Danny received another message from Prime. This time it was from the Council of Families. The video showed an official chamber with ceremonial decorations. A council leader with silver fur and wise eyes spoke directly to the camera. Danny Martinez of Earth, the people wish to honor you. You saved 3 of our cubs not with medicine, but with the ancient wisdom of care and nourishment. You reminded us of what we had forgotten in our modern age. That healing comes from connection. That love is the best medicine. The council leader held up a beautiful medallion. This is the heart of the family, our highest civilian honor. It is given to those who preserve and protect our children. We would be honored if you would accept it. The camera panned to show Myra and standing with the council. They'd grown so much. Myra stood tall and confident. Eyes were bright with intelligence, smiled with pure joy. They were whole again, not unchanged by their tragedy, but healed enough to thrive. We wanted to tell you ourselves, Myra said, stepping forward. You saved our lives, but more than that, you taught us that strangers can become family, that kindness exists even in dark times, that there's always a reason to wag our tails again. Danny accepted the honor in a ceremony on Prime 2 months later. The 3 cubs presented the medallion, and their tails wagged the entire time. A year after the original rescue, Danny's methods had been adopted by medical facilities across the Confederation. Comfort cooking was now a standard part of pediatric trauma care. Medical schools taught his protocols. Parents learned that taking time to prepare food with care was as important as choosing the right nutrients. Danny continued his work on the Celestial Mercy, cooking for crew and patients alike. The galley had become the heart of the ship, a place where people gathered not just to eat but to connect, to share stories, to find comfort. He still made soup regularly, sometimes for patients, sometimes just for himself. Each time he thought about his grandmother, about her kitchen, about the way she'd saved him with nothing more than chicken broth and love. One evening, he stood in the galley preparing a large batch of soup. Tomorrow, they'd respond to another emergency, another crisis where people needed help. And Danny would be ready with his simple tools and his grandmother's wisdom. A young ensign entered the galley, looking lost and homesick. She was fresh from the academy, her first assignment far from Earth. Specialist Martinez, she asked quietly. I heard you sometimes cook for crew members. I know it's silly, but I miss my mom's cooking. I miss feeling like someone cares. Danny smiled and gestured to the cooking station. It's not silly at all. Come on, help me chop these vegetables and I'll tell you about my grandmother. As they worked together, the young ensign's shoulders relaxed. The smell of soup filled the galley, and Danny understood once again why his work mattered. Because everyone, no matter their species or their age or their circumstances, needed to know they were cared for. Everyone needed a warm bowl of soup made with love. Everyone needed a reason to wag their tail again, metaphorically or literally. And Danny would keep cooking, keep caring, keep spreading the simple wisdom his grandmother had taught him all those years ago. That love was the most important ingredient, and it was always enough. And in that moment, stirring his soup and listening to his crewmates' stories, Danny understood what his grandmother had tried to teach him all those years ago. Love wasn't just a feeling, it was an action, it was showing up, it was taking time, it was cooking with care even when it would be easier to just open a package. It was making soup when someone needed it, and it was enough. Danny felt terrified by the attention. But when he looked at the cubs, at young Crystal, at the growing collection of gifts from grateful families, he knew it was worth it. He had learned something important. Technology and medicine saved lives, but sometimes what saved a soul was simpler than that. Sometimes it was just warm soup made with care, shared with love. Care that crossed all boundaries. "I can try," he said. The cubs didn't move toward the bowl, but they were watching now. All three sets of eyes followed his movements. Their ears were no longer flat against their heads. Danny settled onto the floor, his back against the wall, and ate his own soup slowly. He told stories while he ate, stories about his grandmother, about Earth, about kitchens and families and the things that make a place feel like home. The cubs listened, and for the first time in 3 days, they didn't look quite so lost.